Hi there, Liron here, and today we're going to review paintings by David Howell. What's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another episode of Painting Masters. I'm very excited. It's been a while since the last episode featuring Thierry Duval. And today we're covering another watercolor painter called David Howell. I originally came to know about his work from, again, the APV art videos, the DVDs that are sold that show lessons of different watercolor painting processes. I've got one by Alvaro Castanet, by Joseph Zbukvic. And this is another artist that I'm now starting to explore a little more. And there's something about his style that's very different from what I'm doing, which really attracts me. He works much more transparently and with much lighter values. So he doesn't immediately push the darks. He builds things up very slowly, and he really preserves the darks for what's important. Okay, so he doesn't push the percentage of dark values and mid to dark values is very low. Now, another amazing fact, and this is I think his trademark, is the fact that he doesn't use pencil. So his paintings are pure. It's just watercolor. And the way he does it, and he talks about it in the DVD, he would go outside with a sketchbook, he'll create a preparatory sketch of the scene, and then he'll do a painting on a fresh piece of watercolor paper, and he will use the drawing that he did to get the composition and different elements, but it's mostly pure watercolor, which is amazing when you think about it. And I'm going to show you some scenes that you will see, and it'll probably surprise you how it's very detailed, but it was done with no pencil preparation, which is something that I did a few times, and I'm going to talk about it later on, so I don't want to talk about it too much now, but it is very freeing knowing that your only medium is watercolor, and it's very rewarding to do that. I'm going to dive deeper on that in just a few moments, okay? So I hope you're going to enjoy this one, and let's get started. Okay, so let's get started with the first painting, and here we've got something that I think is really a staple of David Howell's work, which is lots of warms and cools and a lot of play with them, and I'm going to show you something really cool in just a moment of another version of this, but also very high transparency. You can see everything's very transparent, very light, keeping the values very light. I like the way he does it. It's so different compared to the way I tend to do things and the way a lot of artists tend to do things. I haven't seen, sometimes you can see a bit of a signature moves of artists that, let's say, going with bold washes that are dark and so on, but I haven't seen a lot of people work that particular way. Now, on top of that, there's the fact that he doesn't draw with the pencil. He keeps the watercolor pure, so there are no pencil lines with this. It's only watercolor after he did a study or two, just sketching it out. So here's a really cool thing, which is the same scene, only in a different time of day, so different light. The main thing I noticed, at least, is notice how, or maybe it's just a different type of light. This shadow here is kind of similar, but maybe it's more of a cloudy sky. So you can see here the roofs aren't as bright or as light and orangey. It doesn't pop as much. It's sort of brown. The background wash for the mountain is a little darker. Here you get a more of a hazy feeling, and this really, the main building takes the center of attention. So that's one strong difference that you can tell between the two. And I'm going to alternate between them, and hopefully you can see what they look like. With the difference, you can pause it and take a screenshot if you want to compare. Maybe, I could have shown these side by side, but I wanted to give you a full view. Notice how, with the clothes of the people, they're very transparent. You can see the steps behind them as well. So a very different approach from what I'm used to doing and what I'm used to seeing as well, I would say. Next up, okay, we have this beautiful scene of a dry dock. I guess there's a bit of water here. The boats are on the water, and another thing that this makes me think of is he has a lot of light in medium values and then very few dark areas. So you can see here everything is very light. The skies and the clouds and the ground, but then he saves his darks only for the main few items of interest. And by the way, painting this way with no pencil lines, can seem a bit scary, but it's actually very freeing in my opinion, because I tried it a few times, and it's simpler. You know what I mean? It's just the paint and you. You don't have pencil, you don't have an eraser, you don't need to create any preparatory work. You just kind of go and paint. And there's something to creating the shape that you see solely with watercolor, with no plan in advance, that makes it, I think, really fun and really rewarding in terms of how it feels. Okay, so what it feels like to just paint directly, and the result is beautiful. I find that to be very fun. I do that once in a while, not a lot. I also used a bit of opaque white paint here to create the ropes, which is incredibly hard without doing that. So I'm taking this video more leisurely. I don't force myself to do like a deep analysis. I just want to enjoy these paintings with you. I love how he treated these, I don't know, wooden poles, I guess. It doesn't look like masts because it's very thick compared to the masts. But I like the way they, if you look at the mountain ridge behind them, all transparent, still visible, but you get a good read of the scene. Okay, and again, this is not necessarily the style that I want to work in, but it definitely is something I can appreciate. I like the more realistic and less stylized and more tight look, I guess, but still very beautiful. Another beautiful scene with these kinds of, is that, I don't know, I think it's a willow tree. We just don't have these here, so I don't really remember. It looks like a willow tree to me. These kinds of scenes he likes a lot because the drawing doesn't make up an important part of this. You know, it's just the general composition. So as long as you know where you're going to place your elements, you don't have to do any accurate drawing. But what I will say is his control of wet and wet is phenomenal. Look at these kind of a thing resembling a building in the distance, and then some of the trees here, the fence. I just love it. All the touches of dry brush in the foreground, you know, just enough details to convey the scene, make it look good, but not too much to, you know, create a burden on the scene or make it too crowded. Here's another beautiful one, very atmospheric. I love this because it's so... the vibe is so strong. Everything is yellowy and red. The mountains are blue in the distance. Pay attention to how he creates this differentiation between the blue trees in the background and then greener in the foreground. A very serene scene, very calm and relaxing. Love it. Another one, this is one of the things I like the most. You know, if you look at that, just thinking about painting this directly without any pencil lines is incredible. I love the rooftops, how he treated them. There's this very hazy building in the background. Then we've got these buildings with a bit of a stronger value. And the closer we get, the stronger the contrast is as well. So what makes this building pop compared to maybe these buildings is the contrast. You get this dark side of the rooftop, then the lighter side to the left, and then the more we go down towards maybe the storefronts, you get these people in here that some of them have been done wet and wet. And I like how he treats windows, you know, just very simple rectangles. And then the boats here are the main, I guess, point of interest that's closest to us. One more note I wanted to mention is notice the granulation. He likes to use a lot of French ultramarine, so we get this beautiful granulation when it's mixed with other paints as well. So very simple, very simplified scenes, but very effective as well. Which is something I love. Notice this very light, barely doing anything, just one wash. It's probably a mix of violet and orange, and then another thin one on top of that for the I guess buildings in the background. I forgot where this is. I think maybe Venice, but I'm not sure. Makes sense, but I don't want to just say. And here we have these elements that are a bit closer to us and create. Maybe set this as the background. Maybe this boat is a middle ground. We have the seagull here, very cleverly done, very minimalistic, but still works really well. Notice the poles as well. There's a nice little variety of burnt sienna and French ultramarine, so we get this always the warm and cool play. A bit of green in the water here, a bit of teal maybe. teal and turquoise together with orange creates a beautiful, beautiful combination that I like and can appreciate a lot. This scene is one of my favorites here. I don't know why. The sharpness of the lines, the way he creates this. And notice how the drawing isn't accurate because there was no drawing. So you get this very crooked lines, but it still looks fantastic. And it feels very free of any constraints, thanks to the fact of not having any pencil line. So there is an advantage to that. Notice this car, I believe that's a Peugeot. I'm not sure, or I don't know. It's I can tell which car it is. I just don't remember the model, but I could tell what car it is, which is pretty amazing considering if you take a look at this, it's very very lacking in details, it's just amazing what the human brain can do, just seeing something so simple that doesn't look like the object at all, and then fill in the gaps and do the rest of the work, if you will. Another thing is just the general atmosphere. The sky is a blue and a yellow combined nicely together. This touch of grayish blue on the rooftops I like a lot, and I think it works really well, and I think it's all deliberate. I think he meant to contrast these rooftops here on the top right with this orange and more red rooftops here. A very subtle highlight on this right side of this tower. There seems to be some wooden planks blocking or obstructing this window. Just a very clever scene. Notice how he left just a bit of highlights on the right side of the people, on the right side of this statue or fountain, whatever it is. The detail here of the window, the pigeons, the shadows, the foreground. Even take a look at this little plant here, beautiful red, strong plant, and it just gives us this feeling that there is some depth to the scene. The shadow that's receding, the higher it goes. The farther it goes from the object casting it becomes a little lighter. Perfect. I love this scene. Actually evokes some kind of an emotion or a feeling in me, which is incredible. Another really good one. So for example, for me personally, this scene will evoke a feeling. This scene, not as much. It will just evoke an appreciation. I don't know why. Something about reds and yellows that brings it out in me. But with this, still beautiful. Notice how all of the buildings in the background are just a big chunk of buildings. Then we've got the boats here and the people, the figures to add some movement. Plenty of detail in the foreground. And it really goes to show you don't need a lot. Just maybe one or two brush strokes, a few dots in there thrown in, some wet in wet to blend into the existing paint, some wet on dry, some dry even. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Another one that I really like. This feels to me like the first thing I thought when I saw this was like a swampy, very green, swampy area. But I don't think it's really a swamp. It's more of a river. I like the feeling of movement in the water. Maybe that's just me seeing things, but I do feel like there are a lot of ripples that maybe hint at a movement away from us, which funny enough pulls me into the scene, brings me into the scene, as we'll see in another painting in just a few moments. And a few hints of buildings here, very well executed, this entire painting. Okay, so I wanted to show you two examples of oils because he also works in oils and pastels. So this is one example. And for me, again, nothing like watercolor, but oils I can appreciate the beauty of them as well. People in the desert, I guess, kind of a desert scene. The trees here, very gray, I guess, trees that you would see commonly in the desert. We have a lot of desert in Israel, so I can tell. And we have the sun setting in the background. Another one that I really liked, very strong, vibrant sky, and I love the touches of different color here in the foreground of the oil. This tree again, just beautiful. The texture of the canvas seems to be showing through very well. Nothing like watercolor to me. I'm a watercolor fanatic, but I could definitely appreciate these. And finally, this one that I wanted to save for the last because I really, really think it's quite amazing that he was able to achieve that with just watercolor, no pencil guidelines, nothing. The first thing I noticed, funny enough, was these wires that are very common in these kinds of dry dock scenes. So he really uses them as a means to pull us into the painting. Then what's funny is there is this reflection of the boats here on the water, and it kind of leads us upwards toward the boats. And then we look at the masts. and we can appreciate the full scene, and it's just beautiful. Notice the very subtle highlights here on this side of the boat. You can see very subtle highlights here as well. A thin slice of light here as well, all around the boat. It's probably a bit of a larger piece because of the details, I could tell. I would assume. I can't tell for sure. And you can see here the wires running around, all of the boats, the main shapes, you know, you have the large tree-like background here that conveys, maybe gives us an overall setting. Then we get, I love the break he did between the low, upper, maybe 60% and then lower 40, or maybe it's more like 30 and 60 with this area that's more full of water. So we get this small body of water with the reflections. A very nice means of connecting the upper and lower part. Some details in the foreground, so we look at all these wooden planks, and I guess the pathway down to the area where all the boats are stored. Plenty of abstraction in the boats. You can see here there's no details, but the seagulls, he did get in there. This maybe large one boat in the background, one large boat, and two smaller here. And the drawing here doesn't even make as much sense. This boat kind of looks to me like it's floating, but it could be, I don't know, maybe I was able to read it just a second ago and now it confuses me a bit. But in any case, this is really impressive when you work. Maybe it is in the air, in fact. Maybe there should be legs here. I don't know, but very impressive when you think about creating this kind of thing, again, with no pencil lines. So I can really, really appreciate this kind of work. And this is it. This is all the paintings I wanted to present you with. I really hope you enjoyed this, kind of taking it easier, not necessarily going deep into an analysis of the paintings, because what I figured is I just wanted to share with you some artists that I enjoy learning from and maybe just appreciating. And so my entire goal here is to just go over paintings, enjoy looking at them, and sharing that with you. Okay, so not necessarily something technical. I don't want to pretend to know even how to analyze these kinds of paintings. I could definitely analyze how they were created because I do this kind of work, but I wouldn't be too quick to give I guess, technical analysis. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed this video, and now we can wrap it up. So this is it. I really hope you enjoyed learning more about David Howell. Beautiful, beautiful paintings. And as you've seen, some are very detailed, and it's just impressive knowing they were done with no pencil lines. And if you look closely, you also won't see really preparatory watercolor lines, which is another possibility. You could draw with the paint. So it's a bit of a different skill. I've seen someone else on YouTube who does that occasionally, and his name is Yanconsky. I don't think I ever mentioned his channel, but he has some very good tutorials. Yanconsky, that's his name, and he shows how he builds a scene slowly just with paint, without using any pencil lines. For me, it's still a challenge, so it is something I want to dive deeper on and explore more. So maybe in the future, I'll maybe even do a demonstration of me painting with no pencil lines. Obviously, for things like portraits and such, it could be very challenging, but maybe for a natural landscape, it would be a good place to begin. So let me know if you want to see something like that. Also, let me know what you thought of this episode in general, and if there's any other topic you want me to cover, any artist you want me to cover. I have a huge list, by the way. I'm just going through it. I could pop these videos really quick, but I am going at it at my pace, at my own pace. Let me know if there's anything else you want me to talk about. I'll be happy to do that. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in another vid real soon.